Hi guys, it's Jasmine, and today I am here with my May wrap up. So in May I read 15 books, which is quite a lot for me, at least. Most of them were children's books, but still, that's more than I've read in a month in a very long time. And I'm very excited to talk about all of them to you guys. So I'll try to keep my synopses and reviews very, very short, but apologies if this video gets a little too long. So the first book that I read this month was Christie's Great Idea by Anne M. Martin, and that is the first book in the Babysitters Club series. I read a lot of these books when I was little, and I really, really loved the series, and so I decided to dip back into it and see how it was, how it compared to how I remembered it. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, which I think that had I not read it as a kid, I probably would have given it 3 or even 2 stars, but since there was the nostalgia factor there, I couldn't give it any lower than a 4. I enjoyed it. I thought it was great fun. If you don't know what the book is about, it's about a girl named Christy who decides that with her best friend she's going to start a babysitter's club because she's always getting offered more jobs than she has the ability to take on. So she starts this club with her best friend Marianne and her other friend Claudia and then the new girl Stacy. And so I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. It was very fun. I don't think I'm going to make it a point to try to read the entire series. I think there are something like 200 books in it at this point. I may not continue, but it was a fun read. The second book that I read this month was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and I gave this book 5 stars. I didn't know anything about this going in. All I knew was that it was like a feminist dystopian involving reproductive rights. And I think that if you don't know what it's about and you're interested in reading it, it's best to go in like that, because the plot was all new and every twist and turn was surprising to me because I didn't know anything about it going in. So I'm not going to say too much more about it other than that. It's a feminist dystopia. Trigger warnings obviously for abuse and sexual assault and a whole host of other things, so tread lightly if you don't read that sort of dark literature often, but I thought it was a truly excellent read. I read it in one day. It was amazing, honestly. The third book that I read this month was The Dumb House by John Burnside, and I've already done a review of this, which I will link below, but essentially I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's about a man who is obsessed with language and the nature of humanity, and the book is about the depths that he will go to in order to try to rule these things in his own mind. The next book that I read is something of a cheat because technically it's a short story, but I found it for very cheap on my Kindle as a standalone book. So it was Sometimes They Come Back by Stephen King, and it was a short story in the collection Night Shift, I believe. Honestly, I couldn't tell you what this is about other than revenge and dead people coming back to life. I gave it 2 stars. It was 35 pages. It's an entertaining read because of course it is. It's Stephen King, but it was ultimately a very forgettable short story by him. Okay. So the next book that I read was this, which is a little collection of poetry. It's called Fleur by Darshana Suresh, and it's all about a young girl and her first crush on another young woman and realizing that she's gay and coming to terms with that and coming to terms with the fact that the girl that she's in love with, Fleur, will never love her back, but still being thankful that she had the experience because it led her to an acceptance of her sexuality that wasn't there before. So I gave this one 5 stars, and I think to give you a little taste of what the poetry is like, I'll read to you one of my favorite passages from it. So this is from the poem Waiting, Waiting, Waiting. It goes, "In that moment, I imagined a lifetime where I would wait for you to come home. A lifetime where you would come home to me." So it's just this short, it's full of short pieces all about this girl and love, and there's nothing more to say really. I gave it 5 stars. This is the second time I've read it and I loved it. So next I read the Sideways Stories from Wayside School series by Louise Acker, and so those books are Sideways Stories from Wayside School, Wayside School is Falling Down, Wayside School gets a little stranger, Sideways Arithmetic from Wayside School, and more Sideways Arithmetic from Wayside School. Wow, that's a mouthful. So I read all these in one day. I remembered reading them again from when I was younger, and I loved them. I thought that they were all hilarious and witty and funny. I admit that I skimmed through the arithmetic books because if you don't know, they're set up in like they're silly sort of arithmetic problems, like elf plus elf equals fool, and you figure out the number that each letter stands for. And while that was fun to figure out the first few times, eventually I was just flipping past the problems to get to the little sections of story. So I guess these are two more cheat books, but that's all right. I really need to catch up on my Goodreads goal. Okay, so if you don't know what this series is about, essentially, Wayside School was supposed to be 30 classrooms on one story, but the builder messed up, and so he made 30 stories with one classroom on each one of them. And it's about the children that go to class on the 30th story, and whose teacher is Miss Jules, and she is a wonderful teacher. There are lots of little in-jokes and lots of little puns. There's a girl named BB Gun whose brother is named Ray, and things like that. Again, 5 out of 5 stars for all of these. They were great reads. So the next book that I read was Grief Lessons by Anne Carson, and their translation of 3 Euripides plays all about grief and loss. I love Anne Carson. I've read If Not Winter, Red Dock, and one other book that I can't remember right now, but I love her writing style. I love her poetic style, and everything about her, really. I love reading interviews with her because I think she's such a fascinating person. And this was my first time reading any Euripides, as far as I can recall, anyway, and I loved them. I really loved... Okay, so the stories that are present here are... Let me check. Right. Heracles, Hikabi. Oh, so there are 4 stories. I forgot. See, I read this about halfway through the month, and I've since read other things, so I sort of forgot. Okay, so they're Heracles, Hikabi, Hippolytos, and Alcestis. And I loved Hikabi because it's a tale about revenge, and I loved Alcestis because it was funny, and that was the first Greek comedy that I've ever read. And much like nonfiction, I worried that I wouldn't be smart enough to get the humor in comedy in Greek plays, but I did. I was laughing out loud. It was a good time. So I liked this book. I thought the translation was spot on. 2 of the stories were really forgettable. I didn't care about the Heracles story. I don't really care about, heroes coming home. Like that plot is just a little bit tired to me, through no fault of Euripides or Anne Carson, obviously. So I didn't enjoy that one as much. But overall, I gave the collection 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm looking forward to reading more Anne Carson in the future. Then I read, we're almost done, then I read The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck, which again, I have posted my review on, and I'll link that down below. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. It was very funny, not super helpful, but funny. Then I read a short play, my only play of the month, Peter and Alice by John Logan. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was about the real Peter Pan and the real Alice in Wonderland meeting one night and having a conversation. It's a fictionalized account of a real meeting that happened. And that is really all that I want to say about it. If you're a fan of either Peter Pan or Alice in Wonderland, I think this would be a fun thing to read. I really enjoyed it. I've read all the Peter Pan stories, and I've read Alice in Wonderland a few times, so I enjoyed seeing their fictional counterparts make appearances, and at the same time, there was such an extreme sadness underlying the whole story that I don't know how John Logan did it. I thought it was brilliant. Then I read another Stephen King short story that I also found on my Kindle. It's called The Cat from Hell. Once again, it was pretty forgettable, not very good. I gave this one 2 stars as well. It was basically about a killer cat, and there's nothing more to say. It's about a man that got hired to kill this cat, and spoiler alert, it doesn't go very well for him. And the last thing that I read in the month was How to Be Alone by Sarah Maitland, and this was all about what it says in the title. It was about learning how to be alone with yourself and society's attitudes towards people choosing to be alone and choosing to live alone. I felt like she was trying really hard to convince me that it's okay to be alone, it's okay to live alone and want to live alone, and I was fully on board, and I didn't know why she kept insisting it to me, if that makes sense, because I love being alone. I love spending time by myself. So I gave this 3 stars, but I'm very much looking forward to reading her other book, The Book of Silence, as well as reading more books on the topic of loneliness and being alone and spending time with oneself and things. So, I feel like I've done a lot of talking. So those are all the books that I read in the month of May. I'm looking forward to June because I've got quite a few books that I've bought recently. I hope that June is as good of a reading month as May was, because I was pleasantly surprised by nearly all of the things that I read, those 2 Stephen King short stories aside. But I love Stephen King, so I'm willing to forgive him a couple of flops in my eyes. Alright, thank you for watching and have a great day. Bye!